Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new channel. You might know me. I'm Tyler Groff von Rebick, and I am. You might know me because I usually do Coffee and Crimes, which is where we basically read about different episodes based on famous criminals, crimes, serial killers, that kind of stuff like that. Really grim shit. Anyways, um, but there's so many different other things out there to talk about. So I thought, hey, let's uh, let's talk about something else. So this is Coffee and Facts. I know, really original, right? And yes, of course, we do have our coffee, and it's really good. And I already made it, so don't expect to see me put like 15 spoonfuls of sugar into it. I know. Really, I'm really getting on the ball with this one. Today we're going to be talking about adult adoption. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Wait, you can adopt adults? Actually, you can. I've done it myself. So basically, how this is going to go with is I'm going to be reading the scripts again, as usual, as we do in Coffee and Crimes, and also I'll probably be talking a little bit more into it and stuff like that because I really can't identify with much that goes on with serial killers and stuff. Because surprise, surprise, I'm not a serial killer. Um, but I am very well practiced in a lot of different other places and knowledgeable areas, topics, fields, all that kind of bullshit. So you'll get to you get to know me a little bit more and all that other kind of good stuff. All right, let's jump in. Adult adoption is a practice that dates back far into history. Though relatively unusual in America, it is legal and is becoming quite more common. The usual purpose of adult adoption is to bring an adult into one's family as a child, or as like in adopt you adopt them and they become like your child and stuff. All this can be used for inheritance purposes in case an older person doesn't have any family to leave anything to, or as a way of taking care of disabled people with disabilities. There are actually different forms of this, including the legal way of adoption, spiritual adoption, honorable adoption, and heart adoptions. The legal way is usually for a person to petition a court for an adoption of said adult. The potential adoptee signs an agreement of adoption, like a consent. The petitioner may present information about the relationship, including evidence of a connection, and a judge usually signs off on the adoption and the adoption's finished. These adoptions usually cost around $350 to $600, though the costs can be waived by the court. You know, like if you're getting divorced and you can't pay the fees and stuff, you can just waive the fees. Um, you know, and you can also do it without a lawyer. After the adoption's finished, the adoptee becomes the legal child of the adopting adult. The birth parents of the adopted adult cannot annul or overturn the adoption due to the legal age of adulthood in the one being adopted. Though this has been the case in terms of people with disabilities being adopted due to the lack of understanding on behalf of their part. History. Adult adoption has been known to go back to the ancient times. Julius Caesar adopted his nephew Octavius and named him as his heir. This led to Octavius becoming the first emperor of Rome as Augustus down the road. Several Roman emperors later on were adopted as adults, including Trajan, Hadrian, Tiberius, to name a few. I also believe Caligula was adopted by his uncle. I don't know that for sure, so don't quote me on that, but I think so. I believe so. During the First Crusade, Thoros of Edessa adopted Baldwin of Boulogne as his son and heir, only for Baldwin to turn around and have his adopted father murdered and succeed him as the Count of Edessa. Baldwin later became the first king of Jerusalem as Baldwin the First. I only know about Baldwin because I once read about Godfrey of Bouillon, and he was Baldwin's brother, and he was really a pretty intense warrior back in the day. And no, he was not related to the Godfrey of Evelyn in that movie Kingdom of Heaven, played by Liam Neeson. Totally different. I think his name was actually Barrison in real life. It wasn't even Godfrey. I don't know why they did that. In Japan, adult adoption was a common practice for samurai families during the Tokugawa era. Samurai families would adopt younger sons of other families when they had no male offspring themselves. This way, It kept the family name alive and assured that the wealth and lands would continue under the family banner. This practice could be lucrative as the younger sons of other families didn't have much in the way of prosperity, since the oldest sibling would usually carry on their own family's name. In Japan today, this form of adult adoption is still somewhat prevalent in the form of mukoyoshi. In this incarnation, Japanese CEOs of wealthy businesses that have only had daughters will adopt the husbands of their daughters and have them carry on the family line in this way. Nintendo, Toyota, and Suzuki have followed this system. Suzuki itself has seen all of its CEOs having been adopted via mukoyoshi. I guess they just can't have sons. They just gotta have daughters, and then just adopt their daughters' husbands. Excuse me. You might have noticed in a lot of my videos, I do like little ticks and things like that. It's Tourette. I believe it's Tourette's. Not 100% positive on it. And moving on. Adult adoption in America. Several U.S. states have certain restrictions and laws about adult adoption in their legal works. For instance, many U.S. states and territories allow adults to be adopted by other adults. States including Alaska, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Utah, Texas, Vermont, Washington, and the District of Columbia all allow the adoption of any person, regardless of their age. In addition, an adult between the ages of 18 and 21 may be adopted in Colorado, Rhode Island, American Samoa, and the Northern Mariana Islands. But after they pass 21, they can't be adopted. Some states have restrictions based on the relative age between the adoptive parent and the adoptee. For example, Massachusetts, Nevada, Virginia, and Utah require that the adult being adopted is younger than the adoptive parent, with Nevada, California, and Utah specifying that the age gap must be at least 10 years, and Virginia specifying 15 years. Some states place restrictions based on residency, disability, or having a step-parent foster parent relationship. For example, West Virginia and Wisconsin both require adopting parents to be a resident of that state to adopt the adult. Several states require prior parental relationship between the adoptive parent and the adoptee, or require the adoptee to have lived with the adoptive parent while they were still a minor. For example, Idaho, Illinois, South Dakota, and Virginia require the adoptive parent to have been in a sustained parental relationship for a specified time period. Ohio only allows an adult to be adopted if they established a relationship with the adoptive parent while they were still a minor, or the child of the adopted parent's spouse, or are totally and permanently disabled. Also, it is against the law to have intercourse or an incestuous relationship with your adopted child. That will actually annul any potential adoption. Though that's pretty, it's interesting. That's a very interesting one. I don't mean it's interesting because everybody wants to do that. I mean it's interesting because I've seen that. Like I read this article where this guy, this billionaire who was going to prison for like vehicular manslaughter, like adopted his girlfriend, so that way she would get his money, which is kind of weird. I mean, I wouldn't want to adopt my girlfriend. Everything. It's called marriage. No, it's not adoption. Adults adopted overseas and international adoption are not guaranteed a green card or citizenship if they should arrive in America, though it is possible for them to get naturalized the regular way or visit on a visa. I've actually adopted adults. To me, adopting an adult is no different than adopting a child. I mean, it's cheaper than adopting a child, but like for instance, I grew up believing that everyone deserved to have a family, and that if you grow up without a family, grow up without someone in your life to care for you and love you and help you and everything, support you and guide you, give you mentorship, then you'd be missing out on something. And if you ever had children and stuff, you wouldn't be able to give them, or you wouldn't be able to show them to like your other family members and stuff, have them build connections with other relatives and everything. So I began adopting adults. And I've helped a lot of people. I like to think that that didn't have that growing up and everything, and it really means a lot to me and stuff. I'm currently writing a book about it. Okay, spiritual adoption. In some religious movements, it's happened that adults will adopt others as part of bringing a person into their family, known as a spiritual adoption. This has been seen in certain Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, and Christian groups. Honorable adoptions. In some countries, royal or noble families have honorably adopted an adult into their house, often as a way of mutual recognition, to rebuild status of a deposed noble to new grounds of respect and acknowledgement, or to assist their own house with potential contributions of the honorably adopted adult. Heart adoptions. Some families and people in the world have opted against legal paperwork by heart adopting adults they have built a relationship with. Many people build large families via heart adoption without the adoptees needing to fear losing ties to their own biological family members. A lot of the people I've adopted were heart adoptions. Examples of adult adoptions, spiritual, legal, or otherwise. Perhaps the most famous adult adoption was Frederick Prince von Anhalt, who was adopted by Princess Marie August von Anhalt in 1980. Though this is more of a business transaction to pay the penniless former princess in exchange for her to adopt Frederick, birth name Hans Robert Lichtenberg, and gave him the surname Prinz von Anhalt, though this is just a surname rather than an actual title. A tactic she had employed 34 times before him, much to the chagrin of her relatives. Frederick later married Zsa Zsa Gabor and became a well-known eccentric in California. He later turned around and adopted 11 adult sons, often in exchange for millions of dollars, and selling loads of knighthoods to people in pomp ceremonies for $50,000 each. I've actually seen a lot of Frederick Prince von Anhalt and stuff, and a lot of the people that he adopts are like not very clean people. Like, I don't mean clean as in like they're visibly dirty. I mean clean as in like one of them is like a pimp who went to prison for like sex trafficking. Another one, like a sauna club owner, strip club stuff like that. And the knighthoods that he sells are all to an order, the order of Albert the Bear, which he is supposed to be an adopted member of Albert the Bear's family, even though he has no actual right to, knight anybody to this order. So basically, it's $50,000 for a medal, and that's it. This practice is actually common in Germany for families of the abolished nobility to adopt adults in exchange for huge payments. The surnames are noble titles and provide little beyond connection to an old history. My last name is a noble title in Germany. Well, Germany, Czechoslovakia, like that stuff. That I wouldn't ever sell it to someone for money. Some brokers have been known to broker adult adoptions for large cuts of the funds to pay, including Hans Hermann Wehr himself, adopted by a Grafine von York, and Horst Walter Koch, also adopted by a Graf von Hessen-Homburg. Heinrich Thyssen, son of the founder of the Thyssen business empire, was adopted as an adult by the father of his wife to ensure their baronial title wouldn't go extinct. Photographer and artist Baron Adolf von Meyer adopted his lover Ernest as his son and heir to his title of Baron. Black Muslim minister Dr. in quotes, Yusuf Bey was known to spiritually adopt many different people, often ex-cons that would come to work in his bakery known as Your Black Muslim Bakery. They would claim his last name as theirs, and that would basically be their Arabic name or their Muslim name. Because, like back then, people were going by Malcolm Little became Malcolm X, and then later became Malik El Shabazz, I think it was. I'm not sure. And several of these spiritual sons would later fight each other for control of Your Black Muslim Bakery, including fighting against his biological children as well. Prior to same-sex marriage becoming legal, it was common for same-sex couples to legally adopt their spouse to ensure they would receive the adopter's life insurance if something was to happen to them. This proved to be an issue when Olive Watson, the daughter of an IBM manager, adopted her lover Patricia Spado, who was a bit older than her, and then they ended up breaking up. However, when Olive's father died, he left in his will that all his grandchildren would inherit his fortune, meaning that Spado would inherit a portion of the inheritance. The Watson family attempted to annul the adoption, but in 2015, the Maine Supreme Court declared the adoption was legal, and Spado inherited millions. Whoops. As stated in a previous episode of Coffee and Crimes, my other channel, Pedro Pablo Nicata Ludena and his brother were both adopted by a Japanese family in their native Brazil in an attempt to immigrate to Japan. This is actually a very common practice in South America, though in this case it was a bad idea, as Pedro became a serial killer in Brazil and his brother became a spree killer in Japan. In 2022, A&E aired the show Adults Adopting Adults to explore adult adoption. However, the overwhelming negativity aimed at one of the adopting parents and the general cringe of the show, including a plotline with Frederick von Anhalt, led to the show being canceled after the third episode. Yeah, I was actually contracted to be on that show, believe it or not. I was contracted to be on the Adults Adopting Adults show, and they said that basically they told me that the people I was adopting were not interesting enough for reality TV. So, yeah, obviously the people that were interesting enough ended up getting them canceled. So, whatever, honestly. I told them that I wanted to talk my philosophy about adopting adults and stuff, how everyone deserves a family. And they seemed good with it, but then after that it was like I had to meet certain rules and stuff. I had to meet certain goals that they wanted, and the people that I was adopting were not interesting enough for them. So they ultimately told me that I could come back on the next season, but it looks like there won't be another season or the rest of the show. So, yeah, it was a bit of an interesting journey there. Well, this has been our first episode of Coffee and Facts. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you'll subscribe, hit the little bell button to be alerted next time that another episode comes out, because we have tens of thousands of different subjects, topics, and bits of information to provide you, all while having a delicious cup of coffee at our side. So, I've been your host, Tyler Groff von Revick, and I will see you next time.